Step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Alrighty, welcome back to the DC pod. I am Christian, joined as always by Dallas diehard Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. Now it's the playoffs. You gotta love it. Separates the men like Trae Young from the boys, Julius Randle. So it's obviously the best time of year. To start things off, Das, what's one series you've really enjoyed outside of your Mavs?
I think you touched on one there. I like the Hawks and the Knicks a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's been the most entertaining, but the closest and the game by game, I don't know who's going to win. It's got to be the Portland and Denver. And we were treated to definitely the game of the playoffs so far yesterday. That was an absolute ripper.
Yeah, great call. So obviously the double OT game, just so much to talk about from both sides, really. So we'll definitely get into that. A lot of news in basketball in general this morning as of the Thursday, the 3rd of June. Hopefully this pod will be out mid-morning on Thursday. But if you've just woken up on Thursday and you're listening to it, you would have seen just a lot go down overnight in the States. And I guess not only NBA, but college, because anyone who keeps up with it would know about Coach K for Duke and how he's retiring. So pretty stacked morning of basketball, that's for sure. So we'll speak about it all, and may as well get started with just the West and go through series to series, because we last did a podcast 5 days a week ago. So obviously a lot can change in that time frame.
Hell of a lot.
And just obviously being so many things to talk about, we'll just break it down series by series as we did last time. So starting with the West, and we'll kick things off. So Utah, Memphis. Thoughts on that? Anything you've noticed other than obviously the Jazz being up 3-1 and they've got a chance to close things out today?
I think, the Jazz are looking pretty tough. It looks like it's very difficult to keep them under about 115 points. Even on their bad games, they're putting the ball in the basket at a high rate. I think in this matchup in particular, there's no one who can go with Gobert. Like Valanciunas is doing stuff, but Gobert is at the centerpiece of everything they're doing defensively, and his pick and roll with the shooting that Utah have got around him and the playmaking when Mitchell and Conley are on the floor. It's an elite offense, and there's no real way that throughout a series that Memphis can contain them. Even though they're trying real hard, they just can't. Big game from Mitchell in the last one, really important to kind of stamp the authority down. Say, yeah, okay, when it comes to winning time, I'm Donovan and Mitchell. I'm going to take over. I've done this before. You can rely on me for that. So I suppose that's really what stood out to me. Every time I keep looking at the box score, you just see how many shots Dylan Brooks has taken. And, he's really assumed that role as like their go-to scorer. Like he scored pretty well during the regular season, but he's getting like 25 points in every game now. So that was quite an interesting kind of jump for him and his game. But yeah, he struggled to be super efficient. Finally got a decent game out of Jaren Jackson Jr., but it's just too late for Memphis. I think this one will be over by the next game.
Yeah, that's fair. The crunch time, as you say, is what seems to be separating them, because game 1 and game 3 were both like swing games. I think it was in the end Utah won by 3 in game 1 and they won by 6 or 7 in game 3. But with less than 5 minutes to go in that final quarter, it really could have gone either way. And it was Memphis that just struggled to get good looks, and that's obviously hard with your main guys not necessarily being perimeter-based players. You've got Morant and you've got Brooks in particular and Valanciunas that all kind of do their best work, so to speak, down low and closer to the basket. So it's really tough to get any sort of good shot off in general, but definitely in crunch time. So I think Conley has down the stretch made some ridiculous shots, especially obviously in game 1. Did he have 28 or something when 10 assists as well when Mitchell was meant to come back but didn't, and then he didn't have that many points and shots in game 3, but he hit some really big key shots down the stretch. Or was it game 4? No, it might have been game 4. Sorry, he hit a couple of dagger threes, just step backs right in whoever his defenders was face. I can't think of who it was. If it's Brooks on Mitchell, I can't think of who defends Conley, actually. Potentially it could have been Ja. But I think that's a really key aspect of their side of things. For Memphis, Jar's just fearless, isn't he? I mean, you see him get blocked by Gobert when he's just attacking the rim to try and throw down that monster dunk. But then you watch the next possession and the next possession, and he is not like shying away. Like most people, you get like blocked like that. You're like, all right, I'm going up, not going up as hard to the rim next time. But that doesn't stop him. He almost goes harder next time. So it's pretty impressive to see just how relentless he is.
If he can put it all together with his jump shooting and particularly his 3-point shooting, then he's going to be just so difficult to stop. And you can see why people think, there's a genuine conversation with, can he be better long term in his career than Zion, the number one pick above him? Because Jar's actually got, if it was any other class, Jar would be the number one overall by far. You think he really has got a lot of all around game and that explosiveness and quickness. He can get past anyone, which is, a scary thought when you think of just how tough it is to score in the NBA, especially in the playoffs. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Memphis have got one more punch left in them,
Yeah, I think it's done, but that's just my personal opinion. I'd expect the Utah to, at home, they're obviously a different beast. So I think they can probably wrap up the series today and then start preparing for either Clippers or your Mavericks, which we'll get into.
Game of the day.
Game of the day. So Lakers Phoenix is the next series, Dar. So obviously the 2-7 battle. And this has just been swings and roundabouts. So first CP goes down and we think, oh boy, it's definitely the Lakers series. And then CP3, tells Monty Williams, nope, I'm going to play in game 4 when Monty wanted to sit him. Has an awesome game 4, helps lead Phoenix to a win. But also in that game 4, Anthony Davis gets injured. So then you think, oh man, now things swing back in favor of Phoenix. And we saw what happened in game 5 where it was just an absolute murder. The second quarter, I think it was LA only put up 10 points. And everyone was calling for, myself included, a massive LeBron game in game 5. But it didn't seem like he really cared too much. If you watch much of the LeBron game, you see, sure, he had 24 points and, seemed to do a little bit of rebounding as well to get some numbers and stat pad there, but he was very perimeter based. He was taking a lot of jumpers. He wasn't too, it didn't seem like he was too engaged. So obviously things now swing massively. He shot 10 threes. So he was chilling on the perimeter a lot, taking jumpers, wasn't too fussed about, really flicking the switch and going LeBron mode. So I'd actually expect him to go LeBron mode in game 6. Well, he's got to, because it's now an elimination game. So there's no time to rest. It would be very LeBron to have 40 and 10 and 10 and lead his team with or without Anthony Davis to a game 7. And then we obviously know anything can happen in game 7, but how do you sort of feel about this series, Das?
I think it definitely all hinges on what's happening with Davis. It's a hip strain, right? They're thinking he's got some,
I think it's groin.
Pain. Or groin, yeah, and we're not sure whether he can play through it. I think LeBron can, if he pulls out a big time LeBron performance, they could win game 6, but they're not going to be able to win game 7 unless Davis is there. I feel like LeBron, he's come back from injury this season. He's missed the most amount of games he's missed in his career, but that still doesn't necessarily, to me, put into question that in an elimination game where it's all on the line, that you would want anyone else, leading your team into this game. It's at home in Staples Center. I feel like much like the, game 3 that was there earlier in the series, I feel like the Lakers will be able to command some whistles from the officials. I feel like they might be able to get something out of Drummond, with the way that they play, especially at the beginning of the game, trying to get to the basket, get some foul calls, get the refs on their side. But on the other hand, if Phoenix don't get frustrated, then this is theirs for the taking. I feel like if Chris Paul's ready to go, he's playing through it. He was able to stay down on 22 minutes in the last game, and with that blowout, a lot of their starters were able to get a bit of a breath. So
he left the game.
Able to knock down. He did?
He did, yeah. He left the game and went back to the locker room. I think he got a hard screen or hard box out from Wesley Matthews that he was pretty pissed off about, and that he sort of lying down on the court for a few minutes and then got up. And then anyway, I think he went back to the locker room in the end and never came back. But he had that, sorry to interrupt you, but he had that look where it was almost like he knew. It was like, when it happened in game one, and
man.
he pushed through with game 2 and game 3 and game 4 to make sure he was out there. And it looked like potentially might have pushed it just a little bit too far. And he could come back in game 6 and I look like an idiot, but just reading body language, he didn't look very, he looked pretty defeated when he headed back to the locker room. But I guess it didn't really matter in the end being up 30, but I think that's something to note for game 6, because if it's no AD for the Lakers and it's no CP3 for the Suns, I don't know actually who do you lean towards, if that's...
Yeah, if LeBron's 100%, you would lean towards him and the Lakers for sure. But you just haven't been able to rely on the supporting cast for the Lakers. I think the Phoenix supporting cast have shown more. We've seen lots of tough play from Crowder, Mikal Bridges. We spoke about him early in the season. He's emerging as an elite player on both ends and a guy they can really rely on in this system. They got some good stuff out of a guy like Torrey Craig as well. Cam Johnson shooting the ball well, looks confident. And Cameron Payne has really asserted himself as a scorer and a playmaker offensively at the point guard position. So when you look over at the Lakers side of things, Caldwell Pope having, suffering an injury, he doesn't look himself. He doesn't look like he's going to pull a performance out of the hat for game 6. 0 points for Schroeder in that kind of must-win game. 25 minutes for 0 points.
That's insane.
It's almost unforgivable, to go 0 for 9, no free throw attempts. He didn't throw a turnover either, so it's hard, it's unclear to say what he was doing. Maybe him and LeBron themselves were in complete cruise control, and they were deciding that they didn't want to win this game because they felt the only way they could win the series was win 6 and 7 back to back. But it's a lot to say that when there's a game out there to be won and they're out on the floor. But yeah, haven't been able to see enough from their supporting cast. Interesting to see Morris was in the starting lineup last week to see if they deploy him a little bit more, because he hasn't basically been in the rotation for the last month. And they're going to need a huge game from Caruso and maybe something more from Kuzma if they're going to get over the line. It seems less likely that the Lakers bench will help them. It seems more likely that LeBron will have to go mode.
Exactly. I mean, just the guy you mentioned himself, Kuzma there, I thought he was going to jump into the starting lineup with no AD, because as you say, Morris hasn't played any significant minutes in, as you say, months. So I'm not sure why the move was to jump straight to him and sort of keep Kuzma as that bench guy. But I remember when Kuzma came into the league and he was just like this sort of fearless gunner, and he just almost had, the just irrational Dion Waiters confidence, and he thought any shot was a good shot. And it's not, you don't even get that anymore out of Kuzma. He kind of just looks like he's doing cardio out there at the moment. And then when it's his time to contribute, he's not doing a great job anyway. I mean, maybe he's sort of been forced into this is a LeBron AD show, and I've just got to do the little things, be more of a glue guy, make the smart pass, box out, rebound, play good defense. So I don't know what's happened with him. If one thing, I thought he would at least be, someone that's pretty confident to shoot the ball, but I don't actually know what his stats were from this game. Did he even take 5 shots? Maybe he took 5, but
he was okay offensively in that last game, but I think that's his high for the series. So back in Staples, they're going to need something from him.
Absolutely. And I think the last key point there that you made, which was really good, was if the Lakers don't have AD and they have to obviously put Drummond there, and the Phoenix don't have CP3, but they put Campaign there, I like that much better for Phoenix than I obviously do for LA, considering their depth. Drummond wasn't playing that great anyway with AD next to him. So the fact that AD's not there and now potentially Drummond thinks, all right, I need to step up. That's a worrying thought if Drummond thinks he needs to get more involved. And obviously you're not getting much out of your power forwards. So if that's the case and both teams are losing those guys, that's a win for Phoenix. Campaign's great. He was on Dallas for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah,
or maybe with your summer league team, or maybe with your summer league.
Yeah, summer league.
So I like that for Phoenix much more than I do for LA. Gosh.
And it feels like Vogel's not even going to try with Montrezl Harrell as well. You've got the 6th man of the year from last year on your bench, and it would have been a great opportunity maybe to start him last game, but he hasn't developed that, that trust from the coach for him to put him out there. So yeah, even though that seemed like a big signing in the offseason, now they're back against the wall. The Lakers are against elimination, and it's unclear whether he's going to see the floor at all in Game 6. It's just it's tough to think about. The Lakers, they're in the first round series, and now they're one loss away from being out of contention. So you can blame the injury to Anthony Davis, but yeah, looks like we might have a new champion this year if Phoenix can get just one out of these next 2 games. It's huge.
Yeah, and it'll be
And
LeBron's
Chris
first
Paul
time,
also
right? He's lost in the first round.
in the first round, is it?
I think it will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and his first time is versus Chris Paul in a matchup head to head. So
Wow.
Chris Paul could have the wood over LeBron in the playoffs, which doesn't seem fathomable, but that could be what we're looking at.
Yeah. I think if you're a betting man, you take LeBron points for Game 6 and 7. I think you'd be a brave person to say the Lakers don't take this 7. Surely, I know he's 36 and he's missed a lot of games. And how bad is the ankle? Did he come back too early? All of this sort of stuff that gets thrown up. But oh gosh, you'd be so brave to pick against the Lakers in this Game 6, and you just think LeBron is due for one of those prime 40, 10, and 10, and just almost 2015, 2014 LeBron, where he went up against Golden State with Dellavedova as his best as his best player to go with him. So it feels like that's coming in Game 6 because it didn't come in Game 5. But yeah, who knows? This Phoenix team, you shouldn't count them out. That's for sure.
I think, it's crazy how the momentum's going to swing. If the Lakers are able to win Game 6, all of a sudden the pressure comes all the way back on Chris Paul and Phoenix. And if AD is able to come back in a Game 7, then the pressure comes even more on Phoenix. But so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. This Game 6 is huge. And it feels like another legacy game for LeBron coming up.
Yeah. Okay. Is this the 3-6 matchup or the 4? I think Portland Denver's a 3-6. Yeah, I think it is. So this series you're speaking about off the top is the one you've obviously really enjoyed the most outside of your Mavs, given the talk about swings. If we're talking about Denver, Portland, that should probably take the lead. It feels like one team's in control after one game, and then after the next game, you're like, no, it's the other team that's going to probably take out the series. Like, other than Game 4, which was a total no-show by the Denver starters, I still kind of think it comes back to the benches and how they've decided each game, which is what I kind of spoke about, when we first looked at this series after Game 1 and Game 2. But Game 5 in particular, that we obviously talk about it, the double OT and Dame going crazy, and obviously you get a really good scoring punch from Monty Morris and Jokic getting back on track doing his thing. But the Denver bench outscored Portland 46-22, So it's just a massive discrepancy that it feels like whoever's won that bench other than Game 4, because it was a blowout and the benches played a lot for both teams, that the benches are deciding it. So there's obviously a lot to discuss, but that's still the thing that sticks out to me as we head into a really important Game 6 in Portland is the battle of the benches. What do you think about this series?
I think that's right. And when you look at the games, the defense from both teams is totally built around stopping the other team's best player. So Denver's defense is totally trying to stop Damian Lillard getting to the basket with ease and pulling up off the pick and roll for 3. It feels like it's so unguardable after watching him last night. 55 points, 12 out of 17 from 3. That's that's just ridiculous from Dame time. And on the opposite end, Jokic, there's not one guy who can go with him. It's the third game in this series that Nurkic has fouled out trying to guard him. And, it's not because Nurkic is a crap defender. He's just working him on the block. He's got all the fakes. He's got all the footwork. Jokic is relentless, and he's shooting the ball from deep so well, which makes it that much harder to stop him. So when you talk about how the defense is locked in and keyed on onto these 2 key guys, there are plentiful shots on the weak side open for guys who are ready and keen to knock them down. For the Portland side, Melo's normally that guy who's able to get a bunch of good open looks, and if he's hitting them, then it looks like Portland can beat pretty much anyone. On the opposite side, it's Monte Morris stepped up for a humongous game.
Enormous.
You touched on it before, 28 points in 41 minutes. So Mike Malone really trusted him and basically played him as the starter. And even though Campazzo started at the beginning of the game, he went to Morris basically the whole second half and through all the overtimes. But yeah, Austin Rivers has been the guy on the weak side getting wide open shots for Denver as well. He had 4 threes. That was absolutely massive for them winning this game. They got 3 threes out of Marcus Howard as well.
Yep.
I think he's a second year player getting his go out of Marquette. So, you talk about their benches and their complementary players. They're going to have to be huge because any pressure that you can take off Jokic or Lillard for a few possessions to keep the offense rolling and keep the scoreboard ticking over is going to be absolutely crucial when it comes to the fourth quarter and those final possessions, just how much juice those star players have to put the ball in the basket when you need it most. And, these 2 players are so goddamn clutch. That's why the game's never over. It happened twice in the game last night where Denver were up 6 with about 30 seconds to go. And then McCollum hits a 3, and then Lillard hits a dagger over Michael Porter Jr. And then in overtime, the same thing happened. Denver out to 6-point lead. Dame hits back-to-back threes, just puts the team on his back, like not even open threes. He's completely contested and decides I'm going to shoot it anyway, and it's going to go in off the backboard. This series, it feels like it's destined to go 7 games. And for me, I think it's almost a certainty that Portland are going to bounce back and win in game 6, just on the back of the momentum that Lillard had in that game. And CJ can definitely play better than he did. Covington's probably feeling slightly good about the way he played, but also kind of crap because he missed 2 massive dunks in overtime that were basically uncontested. That could have that could have helped them win the game. I don't know.
Just lay it in.
So bad.
What are we doing?
Seriously. And Norman Powell, he was huge in game 4. I think he had 30, but didn't do much in game 5 either. So I expect him to step it up a bit in game 6. I think this is going back to Denver for game 7, almost certainly.
Yeah, that's what the way I lean as well. The trend of the series and how it's going, the seesaw. This isn't done. Like if anyone feels like the Blazers put up, Dame had 55 and they still lost. Like the series is looking like it's going to get wrapped up. Like no way. We quickly forget just how bad Denver was in game 4, right? Where it quickly, the game was almost over by halftime. Like they got nothing out of Porter in that game in particular. And, Jokic shot the ball pretty bad himself. I think he was 7 of 18 in the end for 16 points. And Malone was just like, this is done. Like it was an avalanche of 3-point shooting. And as you say, Norm Powell was the main guy there. Dame shot 1 of 10 in that game, just for the record, but they still won by, 30 or 20. So I think there's so much to discuss, but I come back to Portland, and a lot of people, and I'm included in that, just how was this the core that is put around a superstar like Dame, a big man who is not disciplined in Yusuf Nurkic? I feel like I was obviously glued into that game yesterday, and he was on 4 fouls with, I think, about 6 minutes to go in the 4th. He has an offensive foul for a charge because, as he normally does when he gets the ball off the pick and roll and he's rolling to the rim and Dame or CJ find him, he's sort of he's obviously not the most agile guy. So all it takes is a pretty smart, alert defender to just stand in front of him and just take the charge, because that's what he does. He's not going to do too much else. And then it was either the next play or 2 plays later, Aaron Gordon goes for a dunk and Nurkic just hacks him, so yes, Aaron Gordon missed both free throws, but you're on 5 fouls there. There's 4 minutes to go in the 4th. You're one of the most important. You can arguably say he's the most important guy to the team, given how I've got absolutely nothing outside of him. They have no trust in Canner. He's been awful, and they have to put Covington.
Yeah.
So if you're knowing that, it's like, give Aaron Gordon the dunk. They need you out there to at least have a body to throw at, Jokic, let alone what you can do on offense to help the team. And, he is a good passer. He's got a bit of playmaking to him and good ability to put pressure on Jokic and make him play some defense. But, you've got to be smarter there. I can't believe that, as you say, it's the third game. And as you say, it's only been 5 games played so far this series, and in 3 of them he's fouled out. So it's more than half.
Yeah.
In 60% of the games he's fouling out, and this is arguably the most important player to your success. Not the best player, but the most important. So you mentioned it with the Covington 2 missed dunks joke. CJ McCollum also stepped out. I know that's a small kind of thing, but it was pretty important because they were down 3 at the time.
Coach killer. It's a coach killer, that one.
Yeah, the out of bounds thing is really going to hurt. I think CJ is another guy similar to LeBron to have a big game 6. You got to imagine CJ has a big game 6 as well. So, I can only see this going 7, and then we go back to Denver, hopefully. So when we get just an absolute, who knows what could happen, because no one's been able to predict this series so far. I mean, I had Portland in 6, you had Denver in 6. There's so much that could go on with this series. So it's definitely, as you say, the most intriguing, most appealing. And we'll hope for a game 7. But surely you get better performances out of some of the role players, for Portland, because they're back at home. It's normally the case. Superstars perform on the road, role players play well at home. It's normally how it goes. So, then anything can happen in a game 7, and Denver will know that all too well with Portland. Was it 2017 or 2018 where Portland beat Denver in game 7?
2019.
2019. Sorry. So it was even sooner.
Went on to the conference finals.
That's right.
Huge.
So it was that year that sparked that sort of run, and CJ obviously had a huge game in that game 7. So. For Denver's side of things, they want to make sure they wrap it up, because anything can happen in a game 7. That's goes without saying, really. Anything else you want to touch on with that series before we move on? Because obviously there could be something I've missed there, but there's a lot to talk about. The only question is, would you have fouled? How they're up 3. Do you foul, or do you just let it play out and hope that you guys can get a stop?
I think in that particular instance that Denver I probably wouldn't have fouled. I think it's useful to foul, and then in that situation you definitely got to think about it. But all he had to do was guard the 3-point line. I actually thought Michael Porter's defense was average to poor. You've got 6'8" frame. Do everything you can to move Dame into the 3-point line. Like, he was standing off him enough that Lillard could step back and shoot. We know that Dame's got limitless range. He should have been crowding him, going up to him. Their whole defense should have been set right around the 3-point line and forced Lillard to shoot anything but a 3. He was basically able to get a routine 3 off. I thought that was quite poor defense, but we know Michael Porter Jr. is not the smartest defender just yet. He's still learning, and that's a big learning curve for him, because Dame basically took him to school on that play.
And then Shaq Harrison was on him for the second one. And that was where Dame did the ridiculous. He sort of dribbled inside of the 3-point line, did a spin back, and then does How do you defend someone that comes out of a spin move straight into a step back, and then just pulls up for 3? Like, that was pretty ridiculous defense by Shaq Harrison.
He was fouled there as well. Dame thought he was hit on the hand, so that could have been
really well. I mean,
a game changer.
A lot of those superstar guys always think they're fouled, so
that's true.
But
he gets a lot of calls anyway.
Just absurd shot making. I mean, most people would have seen it on the internet anyway, with him breaking the record. So Clay had 11, or was it 10 in OKC in that famous game 6?
11,
11. So Dame was then able to break it with 12. If he was 12 of 17, you'd almost want him to shoot like 5 more. See if you know what I'm saying? Like 12 of 17 is ridiculous. Wouldn't you want him to?
He made 5 of his last 6, I think. So he got cooking at the very end. That's ridiculous. 12, 17.
And I know a lot of people are saying, and he still had 10 assists and 6 rebounds. Like, what the hell? So I know a lot of people saying he played almost a perfect game and made some terrific decisions with the ball. And If you're that hot, I want you to shoot it every single time. Like we saw in the All-Star game when Steph was pulling up for halfway and then Dame was like, fuck this, I'm going to pull up from halfway as well. Wouldn't you? I wouldn't have, no one would have been against that, I don't think, from the Portland side of things, if Dame just brought the ball up and if he knew he was going to see a couple of bodies as he crossed half court, just like pull up before they can get to you. Like you're that hot. If you're banking in threes as well, that's when you know it's your day. Like if you can bank in a three, then, you're definitely on. So I would have liked to see that. That's probably the only thing you can, and it's not even a criticism because he played that well, but it's just the thing you probably think he wishes to himself, knowing knowing what he knows now about how the stat was 1 of 19 from role players, and they're scoring in both overtimes. 1 of 19. Like that's the help you get. So Dame did about all he could. And even if any one of those guys stood up, even if Melo hit a big three or just anything, but it just couldn't get a single thing.
He's tearing them up, Lillard. Like he's getting to the basket with ease as well. For as much as Jokic is picking apart their defense for Portland, Denver can't stop him in the pick and roll. They absolutely cannot. And it was so clear at the end of that game. So the series is definitely far from over. Lillard's got his complete command offensively, even if his teammates weren't helping him out as much in that last game. I'd expect them to come to play in the next one, and Lillard's going to be able to get them wide open shots. That's for sure.
Yep. So it was Dame in OT and double OT. He was 17 points, 6 of 8 shooting, whereas the rest of the Portland players in OT and double OT were 2 points on 1 of 19. So, yeah, right. I mean, that should kind of tell you the story as well. When Jokic was, and we got to talk about some of the Jokic passing, obviously just freaking absurd, right? Finding Porter Jr. in the corner. He also found Austin Rivers in the other corner. Awesome. There's just so many things to his game that's so bloody elite. It's, when do they announce MVP? I always thought they did it in the first round, and they haven't announced Defensive Player of the Year either. So there's still a couple of awards to go.
Yeah, I think they do it kind of series by series as the series go on. Once we're out of the first round, we'll clear another one and into the next round.
Okay.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. We don't want anything to distort our view of the regular season.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so that obviously will get very interesting game 6, and hopefully they force a game 7. So now the 4-5 battle. Your boys against the Clippers. Take it away.
It's a 3-game series now. It's incredibly difficult to just push away those first 4 games because of how well we played in the first 2 and how we came out so strong in the 3rd game. But the truth is that you just got to completely forget that, because we're now in a 3-game series when they've got home court advantage and every game's a must win. We've lost 2 in a row, so to lose 3 straight is basically a death sentence in a series. So everything kind of hinges on this game 5. And, I spoke about it at the beginning of the series, how we've really struggled to close out games at home the whole regular season. We did play really well in patches of game 3, and we weren't able to capitalize. We weren't able to keep that momentum going. And we went through big scoring droughts, which, led to the Clippers getting easy baskets. They're playing out of their defense. That's what they do. They're an elite defensive team. When they're able to, put us in situations where we're shooting a lot of contested threes, and when we're not hitting them, then they're getting layups on the other end. They're really capitalizing on those opportunities. So I feel like they've grabbed momentum in the series, and Kawhi has been nothing short of outstanding. The efficiency that he's shooting the ball, it feels like any matchup we've got on him, he's able to get to his spots and elevate, rise, and score with ease. So that's going to be huge. If we can somehow find a way to make him less efficient in this game today, then I think we have a chance. It's a lot of the talk's been around Porzingis and how he hasn't been able to have a breakout game in the series. He had a couple of 20-point games, but he was basically non-existent in game 4, and the whole kind of momentum of the team and the morale of the team was real crushed in that game 4 loss, losing by about 25, 30 points. So I really want to see a response from the boys. We weren't expected to win the series at the beginning. So I think we've got to throw away, the opportunity that we that we kind of let go in the first 4 games and embrace this new opportunity, which is, a chance to knock the Clippers off at home in game 5. We need a huge game from Hardaway Jr. I would love to see Porzingis, potentially earn that money that we've paid him, come out and give us a dominant performance, give us 30 points. We're paying you almost $30 million for this season. Can you carry us for one game offensively when we know that Luke is under a bit of, an injury cloud, a bit of stress in his neck? And I still expect him to come out and have a huge game because that's just what he's done, every time he's hit the floor this season. But we need someone else to step up, and I think it should be KP. But nothing really strikes me as really confident in him having a huge game. I think it's more likely that we get a better performance from Hardaway Jr. and Brunson and Kleber and co. So yeah, I'm looking for a huge performance from the lads, and I think the hardest part is just going to be to forget about what's happened before and embrace this 3-game series that we're in right now. What do you reckon what do the Clippers need to do to close it out in this game?
I actually hate him in the spot as favorite. So you obviously saw that no one was picking Dallas coming into the series, and then you guys were able to take care of business game 1 and 2, and then game 3 and 4, it was, geez, the Clippers need to blow it up. What's going to happen? Is Kawhi going to leave? Is Paul George going to get traded? And then you saw, obviously, you said the 30-11 lead or something in the first quarter of that game 3, and it was just like, oh shit, like it's happening, all right. So. And then they obviously fought back and were able to do a great job of getting the win in that game. And then game 4, they obviously just, put the foot on the throat and just really took control. But now it swings back to the Clippers being favorites and Dallas being underdogs. And I do not like that spot for the Clippers. I think they perform much better when everyone picks against them. I don't think they're very good front runners. I not going to lie, it was game 4. I just thought of course, all momentum was swinging towards them, but I certainly didn't feel confident that they could hold that 25-point lead and close out the game given their history. But yeah, it's the small ball, isn't it? That seems to have been the thing. They've doubled down and they've really gone with Batum there alongside Morris, Morris is predominantly playing the 5 and it's more Batum the 4. And then you obviously have Kawhi, PG and Reggie Jackson, which has been the most surprising. I don't really think he's that good, but his scoring and shot making was okay in game 3 and 4. It wasn't terrible. I wouldn't say he's amazing, but he definitely didn't, look out of place, I'll say, in that 5 that you got that they were running with. Good to see some Terrence Mann minutes. Always love to see that. I like that Ty Lue's gone, you know what, Pat Beverly, you're not going to help us. So you'll just sit on the bench. Like, I know he's the, the defensive guy, the irritator, the glue guy, the hustle guy, but he's a zero on offense, and it's not going to work this series. Like, who can they put him on that he's going to have a big impact? Like, Hardaway's too big. Luke is obviously too big. And then what do you try and hide him on a wing or something like that on defense? Like it's much more appropriate to use him as an on-ball defender when you're playing against a Portland and put him on Lillard or CJ, someone that's more his size. Yeah. So he's an easy guy to come up against. So look, today from the Clippers, gosh, I just think you need to continue to have an aggressive PG. I know we've spoken about Kawhi and how he's really killed. Predominantly, it's been Maxey that you guys have put on Kleber, you've put on Kawhi. So I think PG's been, really good as well in this series. I know you spoke about Kawhi and his efficiency and his dominant scoring, but I like how PG's been looking really aggressive and getting to the rim more often than he usually does. Normally he's quite a, perimeter based jump shot oriented player, can settle quite often, but seems to be a real emphasis on getting to the rim. So I've enjoyed that part of his game. I hope they can continue in this game in particular at home when everyone's expecting him to win. Can they continue to do what they did in game 3 and game 4? Because it almost swings back to, as you say, what it was like in game 1. Clippers are favorites. No one's picking Dallas. And it was just an avalanche from you guys with your 3-point shooting. So I suppose, can the Clippers continue to hold you guys to sub 40% or even sub 50% from shooting from deep, because you guys obviously put on a clinic in Staples and shooting the ball in games 1 and 2, but then that sort of regressed back to the mean in games 3 and 4. So look, a lot of it hinges on how good can PG be, because I think if it's just Kawhi doing it all by himself, I don't think they'll have enough. They really do need PG to chip in with 25 plus. But yeah, that's just from the Clippers side of things. You've covered off on a lot of it for Dallas. So it's just the Clippers can you continue to, relentlessly attack, because that's been a key theme in game 3 and 4, as you said, getting pretty easy shots around the rim in particular. There hasn't been too much resistance from you guys in protecting the rim. And so that's what I want to see from the Clippers. Now you're back to being favorites. Now it's back to being, it's on you guys. So, you're not on the road. It's not a hostile environment. You're back at home. We want to see if you guys can continue what you did in game 3 and 4.
You're right. Like, as much as I don't want to see it, I think the Clippers, if they come out and shoot the ball at a high level, if PG comes out and is able to knock down a few threes and really stretch out our defense, then it could be lights out, because we've seen how good they are statistically this season. They got 5 guys shooting over 40% for their team for the regular season.
Well, who is it? PG, Kawhi, Morris, and
Batum.
Who's the fourth? Oh, was it Batum the fourth?
Kennard. Well, Kennard's definitely in it.
Okay, he's got to be.
He shot over 40%, even though he hasn't hit the floor really in the series. But
64 million, whatever.
Yeah, that's quite puzzling. But if they're able to shoot the ball well, the Clippers, then the Mavs could easily find themselves down early in the game, and it's going to be really tough for them to respond, especially if Luka is hurt. So, the Mavs really need something kind of out the gate to really get them going, and I'm hoping that's Porzingis or perhaps Hardaway Jr. And in that last game, you saw Carlisle was looking for anyone who could get them a bucket, anyone who could give them some kind of offensive momentum. I think we need to see some more minutes from Jalen Brunson, because we both really like what he does offensively, and I think with a little bit more opportunity, he could score the ball and take advantage of that point guard matchup and take some pressure off Luka scoring the ball as well, because I think he at times is very, very efficient. Brunson, he's a close to a 50, 40, 90 guy in the regular season, so I'd like to see him get unleashed a little bit. One thing that I'm hesitant to talk about because I still like what he's done this year, and I feel like he's been a big part of what's been a pretty good season so far. But the inability of Josh Richardson to score the ball or be a scorer for us in this series is quite telling. I guess there's plenty of shots there for him, especially in the mid range. But if he's not confident enough to get into to attack closeouts, get into the mid range and score, or get all the way to the rim and finish at the basket with his athleticism, that's just another part of our offense that puts more weight back on Luka to score 30 and to carry us home. So, we need those little contributions. And as you get to the final games of the season, when your team's backs up against the wall, you kind of get to figure out who can we trust, who can we rely on in the most very important games of the season when the momentum's against us. Who's a guy that we want to keep going forward, because the Mavs are kind of at that point almost in this series. So really interested to see who comes out and really puts their imprint on the game in game 5.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of good points there from obviously your side of things. The only thing I would add is can Dallas find a way to punish the Clippers for going small ball? Can you get better looks in the rim, around the rim? Sorry, can you get maybe some Dwight Powell minutes? I didn't see a terrible amount of him in game. Was it game 3 and game 4? He didn't really play too much. It seemed to be, if anyone, was it Cauley Stein? A little bit of him. But
they went with Boban for a bit.
Oh, that's right. They went with Boban. Yeah. Good point.
He was good.
He was. So I don't know if that's what you try and do. It seems as though whenever they do that, though, Ty Lue just brings on Zubac off the bench to sort of match up as best he can for those 5-minute spurts that obviously happened with Boban there. But yeah, if a team's going to go small, you got to find a way to punish him. You just do. Given if Marcus Morris is their tallest guy and he's 6'8", that's another thing I'd want to see from Dallas. I know you mentioned how Carlisle was sort of not throwing shit against the wall, but in game 4, he sort of wanted to see what he could get out of certain guys. And there was a little bit of Trey Burke. Could he come in and give some impact?
I want to see it. I want to see it because he was huge in the series against them in the bubble, you know? So I talked about it constantly throughout the season, how I'm not sure why, but Carlisle has really been scarce and random in the times he's put Burke on the court. But as we get to that final point of the season, it's now or never, unleash him at some stage and see if he can get hot.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that's obviously another massive, game that we need to talk about. That's going to be on the schedule in these next couple of days. So, gosh, that's such a good time, such a good time of year, that's for sure. But this week feels like, Portland, Denver, game 6, Clippers, Mavs, game 5, and then obviously it will be game 6, Lakers, Phoenix, game 6. There's just a lot. As much as some of these other playoff series has been disappointing, those ones in particular in the West have been really, really good. Made it super
so
entertaining.
Wide open, the West, especially if the Lakers get knocked off, then all of a sudden, who becomes your favorite in the West, you reckon, Chris, if the Lakers lose to the Suns? Utah? Number 1 seed?
You don't want my answer. I kind of think it's the Clippers if the Lakers.
Yeah, default it becomes the Clippers, but no one would have said that after being 0-2 at home against the Mavericks.
No. Okay, so the East now. We'll switch over to. So makes sense to just start with the 1-8. So that's Washington, Philly. So
should be over, mate.
Obviously,
should be done.
Yeah, the game 4 was pretty disappointing. Really bad timing to have a horrendous Ben Simmons game. Tobias was inefficient. He had 21 points, but it took him 24 shots to get that. We needed a real burst from Korkmaz in the 4th to bring us back into the game because Washington took a double-digit lead there in the 3rd quarter, and we needed some sort of spark to get us going, and that was Korkmaz and sort of playing down the stretch. It was unfortunate we couldn't close out that game, but just too many dumb plays, and I think it just goes to look. I don't want to use the officiating as an excuse, but I found some of the calls so confusing.
What did you think about the Simmons one? This when Westbrook tackled him in the air when he was going for a dunk.
Well, that's what I was about to say. How often do they give that a flagrant? But they decided not for that one. So I don't know.
It was clear cut.
It was confusing, man. And obviously Ben, we know, is shooting. There's no guarantee he would have, knocked down those shots anyway. But obviously with the flagrant, you get the free throws and you get the ball back. So that's a key part of that whole discussion.
That was interesting, wasn't it? The Hacker Simmons strategy. He ended up taking 11 free throws. I think there was 3 times in a row between 3 minutes and 2 minutes to go in the game where they intentionally hacked Simmons and put him at the free throw line. I think it was 1 for 6 in that stretch. So something that teams will definitely be implementing. I feel like that might be the last we're seeing of that from Simmons.
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a ton more of that. And it's funny. It's very Doc Rivers. He's got a history of it, defending his guys relentlessly. And, definitely being a ride or die type guy. So, when he get asked after the game, what do you look to counter that? Do you take Ben off the court? And Doc basically called all the media a bunch of idiots and they've never watched basketball in their life if they think that Ben needs to be taken off the court. So we just got to find a way around it. He hasn't. I don't know what his free throw shooting was for the regular season. I feel like it was in the 60. Okay, so if it's the fact that it's just dramatically dropped off to this much that is the reason kind of why it's now suddenly an issue. But the one thing that was a problem for me, Das, to close the game in particular for game 5, and I saw it on Twitter as well, but you could clearly see it. We just didn't play enough defense. Like we're a team that's known for being such a good defensive team, but defense is our issue. So here's the official.
Hachimura get way too many easy ones.
We let him get out and run way too much. We let him get out and run way too much. But this one particular guy on Twitter, his name's I think his name's Frank Jackson. Anyway, he's very good, very glued into all these games. Watches a ton of Sixers, and he says after the Wizards started intentionally fouling, the Sixers gave up 10 points on 6 possessions. So that's 1.67 points per possession before starting their own foul game. So it's more due to the fact that we decided to not play defense on the other end, as opposed to, the fact that Ben couldn't make free throws that really affected us. So it's something that I'd expect us to be much better for today's game 5 at home to be able to wrap up the series, is just focusing on defense. Obviously, we don't have the main guy in the middle there, as you said, with Embiid, and the offense might not be able to flow as easily, but it's got to come back to defense. Just get stops. We've had a game or two where we've kept the Wizards under 100 in this series. So just get back to doing that. It's not that difficult. And I think in the end, we do have enough, given that the Wizards defense is non-existent themselves. I think if we just get down to locking them up, making it a half-court game, you saw how much the Wizards struggled in that playing game against the Celtics, with the Celtics making it a half-court game. Just Philly do that. Washington will struggle to score. Don't let them get out and run, and we should be okay. So that's probably where I think game 5. And obviously, Ben, just be more aggressive, continue attacking, because that's obviously he's something he did in, was it game 2, where he came out the blocks early and had 20 plus, and that's what we love to see. So yeah, that's probably game 5. Just play defense. That'd be what I'd ask for.
I think they definitely came out a little bit slow. They came out thinking, it's a closeout game. Let's we can just roll through this one, and hopefully we'll get it done in game 4. Obviously, Embiid exiting the game, makes it a lot tougher, because they can play not so much defense and then just throw it down to Joel and get an easy bucket. So interesting. So he's definitely out for this game 5. Embiid definitely not playing.
Yeah, done. So obviously the news broke. Oh, you can go, and then we can discuss the news after.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So, they'll have to lean on their bench a little bit more. I actually thought they got a couple of good games out of Hill, and Maxey. Your boy Maxey actually was really good in this game. So that's an interesting kind of good development for them in the series to help them close it out. Tobias will have to shoot the ball better for sure.
Yeah.
He's not going to shoot 24 shots and go on 33% again. I think he'll be better. Still haven't really had a big breakout shooting game from Seth Curry either. I think he might still be dealing with some injury, because he hasn't really knocked it. He's gotten double figures in most games, but he hasn't really stroked the 3 ball very well. So I would like to see him do a little bit more of that. And on the flip side with Washington, I wouldn't be expecting another 20-point double-double for Hachimura on the road. He was able to knock down 3 out of 6 threes, which, he hasn't necessarily been a knockdown shooter really at all this season. And he was able to get a few nice dunks in transition. So if you guys can cut that down, I think you could definitely reduce the amount of points that Washington will be scoring. And they're missing Bertans. They're missing an important part of their success in the last month or two is Bertans and his ability to shoot the ball. He's out for the season with I think it's a bad calf strain. So that's going to put a lot of strain on Washington's rotation, and they're going to have to hope someone else can knock down some threes for them, because you start to look down their team roster and really expect any of these guys to have a big game, especially not on the road against the number 1 defense basically in the league. So I think Philly will close it out. I think they'll find a way. They just try to keep Beal down under about 50 points would be enough. If Beal doesn't go off for something crazy, then I think they should do enough to win this game. And one more thing that was big in this game, despite Embiid's exit, was Gafford had a huge game defensively, and another 5-block game for him. So Scott Brooks has done what we wanted from him. Play your best players, stop playing Alex Len and put Gafford in there. And then he gave some really good minutes to Robin Lopez, who had a sick game, 7 of 8, did about 8 hook shots. He was awesome. So
how do you defend that?
Yeah.
He's going to do it every time, and still no one can stop him.
I like him. He's almost got himself another contract for next season. But I think Philly will close it out next game. They don't want it to go any further. They don't want to have to go back to Washington. So I think they do everything they can to make sure they win this, get Embiid another couple days of rest before they head into a second round series with potentially Atlanta.
Well, the key thing there to go back to what you're speaking about there with the bench guards in Maxi and Hill, it's been very interesting now that I'd almost say that both those guys are more of a priority for Doc to bring off the bench than Shake Milton, which just we've spoken about it before, just how sort of disappointing Shake's been this season. I had such high hopes for him to be a potential sixth man of the year, and he's showing flashes, but just no form of consistency whatsoever. And I always speak about it with the guys in the group chat for Philly diehards as four of us or five of us. So it's spoken about often. It's so confusing that he can't get it going. There's a theory that with some diehard Sixers fans that Shake deep down wants to be a starter. He wants to be seen as one of the guys, alongside Ben, Toby, Joel. He wants to be the main man, because he did get a taste of that last season. There was a period there where we went on a West Coast road trip. And Shake was the only guy there because Simmons and Embiid were both injured, and he had 37 against the Clippers, I think it was, and sort of his breakout game. And everyone loves to make the joke about if someone performs well against Doc Rivers' team, Doc will look to sign him in the offseason. So it's interesting that and it's funny because when Doc first joined Philly and he spoke about obviously getting to coach such a talented group. And one of the guys he mentioned was Shake Milton. He only mentioned about 4 or 5 guys, but he mentioned Shake. So it's funny how that sort of theme continues. If you're an NBA player that's looking for your next contract, just play well against whoever Doc Rivers is coaching, and you'll be certain to get a deal from him or some sort of contract offer. That's for sure. So just on that side of things, yeah, it's very confusing that he hasn't got it going. I don't blame Doc for suddenly going, you know what, George Hill, obviously veteran, can hit shots from the perimeter, good defensive IQ, good guy to have in the guard spot there just for some sort of safety and security. And then obviously Maxi is just sort of an energizer bunny. It's just anything we can get from him is great, because he sort of has a nice floater game. He's sort of fearless, being this sort of young, relentlessly sort of attacks the rim. And he can hit a three, if given enough space. So I do like the move to, have those two as sort of the first 2 bench guards to come on, as opposed to having Shake in that group, because it sucks, but he hasn't proven himself. So it is something that's worrying. And the only theory is he wants to be a starter and he's not getting it, so he's being a diva. His body language is awful. He seems to come on and never be happy.
I think they tend to run Curry with him in that lineup when he comes on. So I think Curry's success probably will have a correlation with some more minutes for Milton, because Milton's able to play that aggressive, get downhill point guard role, and Curry is really able to stretch the floor, because Curry can carry your offense for small periods of time. He can really shoot the ball and can really score. So I'd expect to see maybe a little bit of rejuvenation from Milton if Curry can get it going a little bit. And he's definitely due, so I'll keep an eye on him for the next game.
Yeah. Okay. So it's something we do probably have to do is sort of look ahead as well. So obviously the news dropped about Embiid, small meniscus tear apparently. So that's a thing that the Sixers PR/medical team has put out as being day to day, which is just laughable. It's certainly a week, maybe even 2 weeks, and which kind of adds to further frustration about how we couldn't close out game 4. And if we closed out game 4, it would have actually given Embiid a week off, a full week, because not only do Atlanta have a chance to wrap things up, but given how the Knicks have played at home and their competitive fight, and it's hard to see that one being over. It would be a tough game for Atlanta either way today. So I would have guessed things would go back to Atlanta at least for a game 6. So just would have given Philly and Embiid some more days off. But yeah, it's waking up to that sort of news this morning, kind of shattering. It does really hurt, given that we will probably be okay for this series against the Wizards, but looking ahead, that sort of really makes things tough for us to be able to do too much. If Atlanta is the team to get through, that's gonna really mean Capella will probably feast It's going to put a lot of pressure on us, to be able to create in the half court, because Atlanta have shown to be quite a really good defensive team since McMillan's come on board. So again, and given the options Atlanta has with scoring the ball as well, it does really make things difficult for Philly. When we once had quite a easy path to the Eastern Conference Finals, it now doesn't look so easy. But yeah, the Embiid thing, he's apparently gonna try and play through it, which will probably be next series, and it's something that will be a lot of pain tolerance and management around swelling. So who knows with that stuff and how that sort of goes. And the one thing I'll say is in the group chat, one of the boys put in a player sort of comparison who went through a similar thing. And as soon as I mention this name, Das, I'm sure you'll sort of cringe thinking about it, given how his career turned out. But the guy that was spoken about was Andrew Bynum. So he went through a similar thing with the Lakers, had a small tear in his knee in 2010. In that playoff run, he played through it, and that it ended up sort of affecting him for the rest of his career, and he never sort of was able to get over his knee issues. So he played his last season in LA in 2012, and then obviously got traded to Philly, and he never really played for us. So it's a worrying thing for the future if Embiid, if we play him through the playoffs and he plays in the next series, and if we somehow get through that, then the series after, because the effects, the long-term implications for that could be really, really bad. But yeah, it's today is just a sad day for Philly fans. I think in general, it's really gutting. We potentially thought we were past the Embiid injuries. We were on the right path. He had a terrific year, the 1 seed, like the list of good things that happened for us this season go on and on. But some reality hit just how quickly this can all sort of end, just with one injury. So it's pretty gutting overall, to be honest, us.
Man, I feel for you. You've stayed strong with this team, and you've loved everything that Embiid's been doing for so long, and he was, as close as you could get to an MVP this year. You hear meniscus tear, you think instantly the worst. You think terrible. You think he's not going to be able to be the same player, tomorrow or anytime in the short future. So really disappointing. Embiid, it feels like Atlanta, if they're able to get through New York, that they wouldn't have a chance at stopping Embiid. So he's probably in that matchup in the second round. He's that one piece that Atlanta just have absolutely no answer for. As good as Capella is, he's not stopping the strength and the will of Embiid. So I really hope that there's some way that he can, whether he can be 80 or 90% of himself, through the following rounds after a little bit of a break. That would be absolutely awesome. The fact that he's going to try to play is at least promising. And it's if you're a guy like Ben Simmons, you're probably a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, you're probably like, what, I actually think I'm as good as Embiid. I think I'm an all-star, 2-time all-star for a reason. It's time for me to take the ship. And Simmons has dealt with his own kind of niggling injuries throughout the back end of the season, but he looks fit and ready to go. To me, I think it's his time to take over and make sure that they get through this series and are able to get some momentum if Embiid isn't able to get there for the opening of the second round. So, it's really disappointing and discouraging, but I don't think it's all over for Philly necessarily. There's a reason that, that's why you go out and get the number 1 seed. That's why you work so hard during the regular season to get a slightly easier first round matchup to potentially get the better of the second round matchup. Well, it definitely is when you talk about not having to verse Brooklyn and Philly. And who knows what might happen if Brooklyn and Milwaukee, if they go head to head in the series. It's probably unlikely. It's probably more likely that one key player is carrying a significant injury into the conference finals than not. Whichever team gets out of that slugfest will be basically done, so they'll be, significantly fatigued. So if Embiid is able to get a little bit of rest, and they've afforded the opportunity by winning this next game, Philly will afford themselves a great opportunity to rest as a team. So I think this next game is super important and give Embiid every chance to at least help them out as much as possible going forward through the Eastern Conference. It's shocking and it's tough news to hit right now, but it's not done. It's a long playoff run. It's basically a month of basketball. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope Embiid can find a way to be really effective, hopefully.
I love your positive outlook. It's great. Needed. Because it's pretty much all doom and it's all doom and gloom with most Philly fans at the moment. So I'm sure that'd make a lot of people happy, but I think in the end you probably just gotta hope that, as you say, we blow out the Wizards. Like show that you care. If game 5, it should be an easy W. We should win by 20 plus even without Embiid. Obviously the Wizards, their main part isn't their big man. They do have some serviceable bigs, as you've mentioned in Gafford and Lopez. But at the end of the day, we're the 1 seed. They were the 8th seed in the end. They are having a terrible season, and we were having a dominant season. So just flex the muscles. Let's get a good Dwight game. Get the win, get the rest. And as you say, again, it's a 7-game series. So against Atlanta or New York, you never know what can happen. We'll try and keep a positive outlook. But yeah, when you just see that news come through this morning, it's kind of gutting. So
for sure.
Okay, Boston and Brooklyn. So I was very surprised that game went 5. In that game 3, you got the game of your life out of Jason Tatum. He went berserk. I mean, Tristan Thompson wound back the clock. I think he had 15 points or 18 points and 12 boards or something like that. And Smart hit over 5 threes from deep. So you almost got the perfect game from just about everyone. And they only just managed to win that game. I think from the Brooklyn perspective, I'm absolutely in love with how Harden has played, not only this series, but for Brooklyn all season.
What was that? 27 points, 18 assists?
18 assists.
On like 70% shooting. He's just become so much more efficient with this team. It's scary.
So I love the role he's got, obviously being the main man with the starters, and then he obviously gets to sort of slide back into his Houston role as well, because he starts the second and fourth quarters, and sort of him and the second unit. So go back to his old Rocket days where it's just ISO and he can play make and he's surrounded by shooting, and sometimes have a bit of Claxton to, give him that almost Capella-like guy where they can sort of have that lob threat for him to sort of throw the passes when, the floater isn't there. That's really the main 2 things, because, we'll touch on Brooklyn and when we speak about them going up against the Bucks. But I think just the only thing is, before we sort of speak about Boston's news that dropped this morning as well in their future, is very surprised they managed to even get a game. That's probably the main thing.
You can thank Tatum for that.
That was otherworldly. So he obviously had 50, sort of was going head to head with Durant there for a while. Kyrie had a terrible game 3, so it was really Harden and KD against Tatum, and Tatum won the battle. So that was about as impressive as a performance as you'll see. Most Boston fans were saying that's Tatum's best game as a Celtic. So
hard to argue that, yeah.
It's disappointing. You would have liked to see him with Jaylen Brown, obviously, and Kemba obviously had his injury troubles, and that sort of continues, and that leads on to bigger questions about their future and what can they do with Kemba? Is he even tradable? Can they move forward with him or not? Obviously, the Robert Williams thing is a concern as well, him not being able to stay healthy. So still quite a few question marks with this Boston team. But, yeah, I think in the end, I think they did a great job to get one against this juggernaut that is Brooklyn, because most people, myself and you included, were predicting a sweep.
Well, yeah, the momentum that Milwaukee have taken after sweeping Miami, it was a good fight from Boston to get at least one win. But both those teams look like they're peaking at the right time. Milwaukee and Brooklyn in their wins, especially those last couple of wins that they had, they just straight destroyed them. It looked like it was such a mismatch. They were just scoring with such ease. They were able to blow them away. They score 138 points or something in the last game, Brooklyn. So they're a scoring offensive juggernaut, and I can't wait to see that series between them and Milwaukee. It's going to be absolutely wicked. And with Boston gone fishing, it's you can
That's
read
funny.
out the news. You can read out the news, but I reckon this is one of the most obscure shifts and changes in management that I've seen. I don't know if this has ever been done the way that Boston are doing it.
I think it has. Well, it's how. Sorry. So I'll announce it first. So Danny Ainge is stepping down and retiring from the front office, and basically Brad Stevens is moving from coach to the new president of basketball operations. So basically, Ainge is retiring. Brad Stevens is becoming the new Ainge, and so now they need to find a new coach. That was the news that dropped.
Wow, that's huge. Brad Stevens, he's been ingrained in the locker room and the fabric of the character of the team for the last, ever since he took over. He's been there for, I think it's 6 to 8 years, maybe. He's been there for quite a
while.
long time.
Yeah.
And now he's transitioning to the GM role where he's going to be acquiring talent and signing these guys to long contracts. So, his conversations between him and his players, they're no longer his players. Then, he's now kind of looking out for the best interests of the franchise itself, and he's going to have to go out and hire a coach to do his job and to be that, that personal link between the players and the head coach. So, yeah, really excited because of how smart we know that Brad Stevens is, and the way he was. Anyone who knows about Brad Stevens and the way that he coached in college and how he became such a big name in basketball in the States, was how he was able to get so much out of basically a complete, a low level Div 1 college with, not getting star recruits, being able to build around unheralded guys. Gordon Hayward's definitely the biggest name he ever had playing for him at Butler. So, and he was basically a no one when he got there. So really interested to see what Brad Stevens can do. That's on face value for him to become your new GM seems like an amazing hire. He's got such great insight into the league with all his coaching experience. But the big question now arises, who could they possibly get to replace him as head coach in Boston? You can guarantee that there's going to be a lot of moves. He's going to change up the roster, shake it up for sure. But who's going to be the head coach next season? That'll be definitely one of the most heralded jobs for any out-of-work coach in the moment in the NBA.
Yeah, so just sort of touch on it. Danny Ainge, back in his day, I think he coached a bit in Phoenix. Whether he was the head coach or assistant, I'm not too sure. But anyway, he transitioned from obviously being a coach to the front office. So it's sort of almost following that model that he sort of was involved in himself with Brad Stevens. So I think it's interesting. I don't necessarily know if I love it. Just trying to be unbiased and put the Philly stuff aside. Who knows? It's hard to sort of, be able to judge any of these things, given Stevens has never been in that sort of position. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how it goes. That's for sure. I've seen a few people already, and it's, still only 8:30 on a Thursday morning, and the news dropped overnight for Australians. I've seen a few people mention Sam Cassell as someone that could come in and coach the Celtics, obviously playing for him.
If Doc will ever let him go.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Will Philly and Doc let him go now? So who really knows? But yeah, I think that's a key part to look out for.
I was reading Lloyd Pierce as a potential candidate, recently for head coach.
Does the Celtics, does the organization want someone who's just going to instill a system that doesn't play defense and gives Tatum and Brown 40 shots a game? And, it's basically the Trae Young fantasy effect. Atlanta were a nothing team, and then suddenly they brought in a real coach, and it's like, wow. So I don't know if Lloyd Pierce has the best name at the moment. I think Pierce needs a couple of years of not being in the NBA circles, and maybe needs to go back to being a lead assistant. And if he can have a good year, if a team he's a lead assistant for can have a good year, then, sort of time heals all wounds, right? So if people can forget about Lloyd Pierce and his sort of shit show with Atlanta for the most part, then he might get another gig. But it's hard to see him being for Boston. If he does get hired in Boston, that's the best news I've ever heard.
Well, who is potentially going to become one of the greatest coaches of all time is potentially going to become available.
No way. Why would he coach the
K,
Celtics? Surely he's
I
retiring.
don't know.
So
Why not?
you're obviously
He's
talking
taking
about Coach K for Duke.
Coach K. Yeah, his next season will be his last season coaching Duke. They reckon John Shire, the lead assistant
Yes.
coach, will take over a former Duke national championship player. Yeah, it's unlikely that Coach K all of a sudden would now jump ship and try to come to the NBA. But maybe that's just a fan's fantasy. See him coaching the Celtics and Brad Stevens running the GM. That would be all time.
Well, I don't know when the news dropped in terms of Coach K being his last season and Brad Stevens moving to the front office, but there was only a few months ago where they were talking about Brad Stevens is taking the Indiana job, wasn't it? For
Was
college
it? Yeah,
and
right.
heading, was it Indiana? I think it was Indiana.
Big one.
So it was kind of like, would Brad Stevens go back to college and take Duke? But anyway, that's clearly not on the table now. So as you say, John Shire, who's been an assistant with him for a while, and he sort of played for Duke for a little bit. There's also Nolan Smith, who's there. He played a little bit in the NBA, the point guard. So yeah, we won't bore people with college talk too much, but yeah, definitely something interesting and just sort of further adds to what we were saying from the start of the pod, where just so much news is dropping. So quickly touch on
definitely going to see a shake up in Boston. Really interesting. You could tell something was bubbling, something needed to happen, and obviously this is it. Ainge is gone, Stevens is transitioning. It's going to look a lot different next year.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's plenty of stuff we could do in the off season with sort of speaking about them. But the first thing kind of comes to mind as well, given he's the most tradable with his contract, is what do they do with Marcus Smart? So something to keep an eye on, because they'll obviously build around Brown and Tatum, and maybe you have to pair Smart with Kemba to try and get off the Kemba deal. You have to use Smart as a sweetener. But the last thing I'll say is,
I think every team wants him. He's a good piece to be traded.
You're right. You're right. He's very valuable. The last thing I'll say is, Dust, it's come full circle for Danny Ainge, right? Because he supposedly he did fleece Brooklyn for getting all those draft picks, and now it's Brooklyn that's the team that's knocking him out, and as a result, he has to retire.
It's tough to fathom that. It's
funny that it's come full circle.
Favorites to potentially win the championship. Brooklyn, of all the franchises, it's Boston. They're a storied franchise. They want to win championships. So whatever moves they're making right now, it's to change their trajectory to becoming a genuine contender. And I think it'll happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay, so if this feels like ages ago that this series took place, but it's obviously because it was the sweep. So Miami-Milwaukee, just from the Miami side of things, what did you think? Because we'll touch on Milwaukee when we do a preview of them against the Nets. But what did you think about the Heat?
I thought the Heat had just run out of gas. I thought they, in particular, it's just they had a short off season. Jimmy Butler was in and out of the lineup, only played 50 games. They relied on Bam heavily. They relied on, Hero heavily, because of also Dragic was coming off an injury from the finals as well. So, they've got quite a few senior players, and they kind of swung for the fences with a couple of signings. Without going too far over their budget, they were able to throw some money at Ariza and hope he could do it. And they definitely swung for the fences with Oladipo, and it was just dreadful luck. Basically in his second game, he looked good, went for a dunk, no contact, hurt his knee a little bit, bang, he's out for the whole season. So, would it have been that different if they had Oladipo in this series? I probably think Milwaukee still would have won. But overall, I think Miami basically, they used the whole tank last year, and they're just basically in this. I feel like they're basically in the exact same position. Butler will now get a full off season. You'll see if you've got one year left of Dragic. Obviously, Bam needs to kind of elevate his game offensively, but I feel like this is about where this team should be. I think everyone expected Milwaukee to be better than this team. They've got more talent, so. I don't think Miami should be too discouraged. I think if Miami were on the other side of the draw, if they're playing in the Knicks series, then, they're thinking about, wow, we might have a chance of beating Philly without Embiid. So it's just a matter of you're coming up against almost definitely, a championship contending team, and they got beaten by a better team. And, I wouldn't be too sad if I'm a Miami fan. We tried hard, but it's not our year this year, and we need to keep developing and get better.
Yeah, I think if Miami won game one, then it would have been a different series. I know everyone said that, but it seems to be the obvious one. So, disappointing they couldn't get that. They've sucked all year for me. So I think in the end, it's kind of, they are who we thought they are. They just don't have enough offense. What's happened to Tyler Hero, I've got no idea. We don't need to dive into that. But since obviously the bubble and everyone thought he was the man and one of the most prized assets coming into this season, he's been awful, not a contributor. Butler was really bad.
Any deal they could have done with Bradley Beal concerning Hero,
they should have.
Would have been, if that was on the table, they definitely should have taken that in a heartbeat. But it actually kind of seems like Washington weren't actually really ready to deal him.
Doesn't seem like it. No, doesn't seem like it. So, bad drop off for Hero. See if he can respond in his third year. And I think the last thing is sort of Butler wasn't that great. So I know he's your all NBA guy, Das, but Bryn Forbes scored more points than him in this series. So Butler scored 58 for the series. Oh no, sorry, Bryn Forbes scored 60 and Butler scored 58 total points for the series. So that's obviously not a great stat if you want to sort of look back to, at the end of the day. I know Butler's a defensive guy, but your best players need to score. Like it's still something that needs to happen.
Butler doesn't shoot threes, and every single shot that Forbes takes is a three. So he basically, what did he hit 7 in one game and 8 in the other? So, man, they've already got more than they expected to get out of that signing for Forbes. That's huge. For him to win them 2 playoff games is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we'll wrap things up actually with New York, Atlanta. We might come back another time once some of these other first round series are done and lump them all together with a preview as opposed to just looking at Nets Bucks. I mean, everyone knows it's going to be a blockbuster, potential finals game series. Given we don't know what's going to happen with the Lakers or the rest of the playoffs, but that's obviously going to be a monster that we'll address. So that kicks off on Sunday. So we might see if we can come back and potentially do a preview and lump in a couple of other second round series as well. But last one, New York, Atlanta. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? I know you're very high on Atlanta from the start. So is this kind of what you thought would happen is happening?
Yeah, I think so. I think they took care of business at home. New York looked inept offensively, I thought, in those 2 games in Atlanta. Obviously, Randall has not got going. I actually think Randall will get going in this next game, with their backs up against the wall.
Interesting.
It's season over. There's no real pressure. They're doing everything they can to keep this series alive. So I expect Randall to go to work, take 35 shots if he has to, just do whatever it takes to get going in this game. RJ Barrett in one of those games at Atlanta was good, and the other game was awful. He could not buy a bucket in that. I think it was game 4 where they got blown out.
Yep.
Yeah, he really kind of got found out, which is it's not a good sign for New York. And I bet you Atlanta are going to leave him open for 3 in the game in game 5. So he's going to have to knock some down, or Tibbs might have to reach further into his bench and try to get a mystery performance out of someone. They need something out of Burks. They need D Rose to kind of, it's tough for D Rose. He's not a guy who's played several games in a row all season long. He's always, every now and then, he's going day to day. He's having a day of rest. And they've been playing him close to 35 to 38 minutes a game. So
crazy.
They're going to need another monster from him to get this win. I think probably the most interesting part about this series so far is basically the war of words between the fans and the team. So the home games have really felt like home games in this series, and Atlanta basically, and all of their fans in the Twitter sphere, they've gone ham at New York in the last 2 games. And you saw it was basically an embarrassment what the Knicks put up in game 4, getting absolutely spanked. So out the jump, I expect to be a really hostile environment in Madison Square Garden. Trey's going to be under all the pressure in the world, and I guess Atlanta, it could go 2 ways for them. They could potentially just be thinking about game 6 and kind of just allow New York to empty the tank and to find a will their way to a win with the crowd in game 5, and then hope that they can close out in game 6. Or Atlanta could shut them up straight away and shoot the ball really efficiently, and then just show that they're supreme team and dominate. But yeah, I'm leaning towards the Knicks have one last shot in them. They're going to have a big win today, I think, and then Game 6 will be a rest closeout in Atlanta.
I think it's done today. I really do. I've been so impressed with Atlanta. I still don't know how New York won Game 2, Das, given how we've seen the rest of this series go. Like, they had no right to win that Game 2. Atlanta missed some pretty wide open shots from a lot of their guys down the stretch in that game. Bogdanovic had some good looks. Hunter had a good look. Gallinari had a good look. So there was several good looks down the stretch in Game 2 in particular. And, Game 3 and 4, obviously Gallinari was much better himself, hitting a lot of shots there, giving a real nice spark off the bench.
When he hits shots, they really stretch the floor.
Absolutely.
So well, that team.
And
when you've got Bogdanovic and him and Hunter, and then Trae Young coming off the pick and roll with Capella at the rim, their shooting is it's just so much better than anything New York's got from the perimeter. It's unbelievable.
And not to mention, obviously, John Collins, he got going a little bit in Game 3 and 4. They sort of looked to find him more. And then on top of that, it's just the most impressive thing is just Trae Young has not shied away from any big spotlight or any big moment. He's been awesome. If he's, I know he took a lot of shots in Game 4, but for the most part, Game 3, he was playmaking, doing a really good job of getting all his teammates involved. Only had 20 or 21 points. But in Game 1 and 2, he obviously dropped 30 in both. So I expect actually Trae Young to have an enormous game today. I think he could be in line for 40 plus to help close out sort of this game today. I think, as you say, the Knicks are going to throw the kitchen sink at him. And gosh, if there's any game they can get, it's probably going to be this one. But I think if you're Atlanta, you wouldn't want to be trying to look ahead to Game 6 and go, you know what, let's let the Knicks take Game 5, and it starts to get to dangerous territory. Then it's shit. What if we can't close out Game 6 and we've got to go back to Madison Square Garden for a Game 7? Like that looming home court factor is they don't want that. So I think they'll really themselves, Atlanta will throw the kitchen sink at the Knicks as well to try and close out this series. I think the one thing I touched on to finish it off with Randall. I know a lot of people have said, it's a no-show and the moment's too big for him and all of this sort of stuff. But gosh, I think more credit has to kind of be given to the Hawks defense and their game plan about stopping him, right? So if you watch, you and I have been pretty locked into this series, but for anyone who sort of hasn't been able to tune into many games, when you watch Randall get the ball, immediately, it's not a double team, but immediately a second body slides over to that strong side where the ball is, and it's just in the vicinity. So it's always something that Randall has to think about. So it's not a hard double team, but as soon as Randall takes a dribble or he sort of looks to go left, which he obviously does, he doesn't have a right hand whatsoever, bam, immediately there comes the second guy and he sprints across. So it's a little bit of a mental game as well that's playing with Randall. He's never been in this position where he almost is getting, Doncic type attention and Jokic and Embiid type attention that potentially he isn't used to. But, sure, the fact that the moment may be too big for him could be a contributing factor, but it's not the main factor. This isn't suddenly Randall going, whoa, this is a playoffs. I wasn't expecting this. Like there's a lot that has to be said about Atlanta and how good they've been on defense. So, I think today's game will be so fascinating. He didn't shoot the ball well in Game 4 either, but he did look a little bit better. I think he might have had 24, 10, and 7. So similar numbers to what we're seeing in the regular season. So, I think that's, as you say, today's game will be so fascinating.
I think he'll get his points in this one. He'll find a way to do it. But, just whether the Knicks supporting cast can hit wide open threes. They've got to do that. They need someone to give them a boost. I don't know whether it's quickly or someone off the bench. They just need that little offensive boost to keep them in the game till the fourth quarter. And then if it's close in the fourth, then they're every chance to pull this one out. This will be a good one to watch today. A couple of really, really good matchups today. If it wasn't the Mavericks overlapping at the same time, then I'd be keeping extremely keyed into this one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's probably where we'll leave things then. There's obviously a lot of games to go on, a lot of games that we've spoken about that will have already started by the time this podcast is out. But just quickly before we go, Das, to get official predictions on each series now that they've gone. It can be different to the ones that that we gave out in the past, but just to go over it. So You think Utah?
Yeah, I think Utah
Utah?
close out game 5 for sure.
Lakers or Phoenix?
I think that's going 7. And if I had to pick today, knowing what I know, I probably reckon Phoenix is going to win that in 7.
Wow.
Right
Okay.
now, today.
I've got Lakers. So both Utah, Das is Phoenix. I'm Lakers. Portland or Denver? I'm going
That's
Portland.
definitely the hardest. I'm going Denver. So I'll
Okay.
stick with what we started with that
Okay.
one. But that's you're splitting hairs, that one.
Dallas Clippers.
Clippers, unfortunately.
Okay.
Love my Mavs. You know, I might actually put a bet on the Mavs just because I want them to win. But yeah, my head says Clippers.
Yeah, definitely a head over heart pick. So I think Clippers for that. Washington, Philly, both think Philly.
Philly close it out today, I reckon. Simmons, big game.
And then the last one that we've just spoke about just before, New York or Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm taking Atlanta in 6.
Yep. Okay. Same.
And you're taking them in 5.
I've got them in 5. Yep. I've got them in 5. Okay. Perfect. Well, so many games to be locked into over these next couple of days. Hope everyone enjoys them. And Darcy and I will be back to either do a wrap up of some of the series that have finished and then look ahead to some of these second rounders that'll obviously be amazing, you know, headlined by Nets Bucks. So we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this pod, and we'll speak to you guys very soon.
All right, guys. Peace out.
See ya.